Hey, this is Sandy.
And Randy.
And we're here on AT Corner.
Being an athlete trainer comes with ups and downs, and we're here to showcase it all.
Join us as we share our world in sports medicine.
Welcome back to another episode of AT Corner. For this week's episode, we have an education episode that I would say is pretty near and dear to Sandra's heart.
Yeah, to know me is to know that I love the Enneagram, and that is exactly what we are talking about today. So this is a CEU episode. If you're interested in getting Category A CEUs for listening to this episode, thank you so much to Clinically Pressed and Athletic Training Chat. If you're listening to this as it comes out, the CEUs are free. If you're not, they're still purchasable on Clinically Pressed's website. So go to the show notes. There's a link for a quiz, a course eval, and it'll automatically generate your certificate. So we are talking about personalities in athletic training. Specifically, we're going to use the Enneagram. I love the Enneagram. That is very obvious. I have always been into personality tests, but the thing that stuck out to me about the Enneagram is that it really shows you what motivates you, rather than all the other personality tests that kind of show more like of an outward personality. When people think of it, they think of like a Myers-Briggs type indicator, or like an MBTI, Myers-Briggs. That's actually the widest used personality test, and that highlights a lot of strengths to focus on, whereas the Enneagram highlights some growth points.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And really what brings you to make the decisions that you make. So my favorite example when I'm explaining this is everyone can bring cookies to a party. That's like, it doesn't matter what personality type you are, but the reason why you bring cookies to a party is we're going to go over in the Enneagram.
Oh, that's very interesting. So what exactly is the Enneagram?
So the Enneagram is actually a Greek term.
Okay.
It refers to a symbol that has 9 points, and it's a really old system of like personality and growth. The reason why it has like this symbol is because each person has a dominant type along the 9 points, but they all connect to one another because we all access points of all of the different personality types, but we have one type that is a little bit more dominant in your strengths and motivation.
Oh, that's really interesting. That's really cool.
So this is actually something that I use with all of my students, and every single time I have a new master student come in with me, I give them so much information about their Enneagram, about my Enneagram, and then how we can best work together, what kind of feedback we need, work relationships, how to like solve conflict and stuff like that. I am going to do an episode on that later.
Okay, cool.
So stay tuned for that. But this, because there's so much information that you need to know, like first, this will kind of be like an overview episode of each type so you can kind of get a better understanding and how it relates to athletic training specifically. So this episode won't go into like relationships and communication styles and like stuff like that, but we will get that in a future episode.
So what I'm hearing is this is the anatomy episode of the Enneagram.
It is the anatomy. It's the basic foundation. Honestly, if you really want to get into the Enneagram, there's like so much you can like nerd out about. There's like wings, there's subtypes, there's tri-types. There's like so many different combinations. So it's not like there's only 9 types of people in this world. Like I know so many different people who are the same type, but like they are completely different people. They just see the world in a similar manner, but their personalities are completely different.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting too, this like as we go through kind of like the different types and stuff, is like it really kind of explains how people kind of behave or
yes,
kind of how
exactly.
they act in like different phases of their life, whether they're like really stressed or whether they're really thriving. I think that helps a lot because I feel like you don't get that with like other like personality tests necessarily, I feel like.
Also, something that specifically for athletic trainers with such a high burnout rate, it is so good to be able to acknowledge and recognize what you tend to look like in your burnout stage, or like on your way to burnout, or like in stress. And so you can start to mitigate those before they turn into a full-blown like burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
There's also like so much you can delve into, like how everyone tends to favor a strategy for processing information, whether it's like heart, through your heart, like emotional, through your head mentally, or through your body, like instinctive. So we're not going to go over those, but like if you want to get into this, like there's so much that you can like
dive into.
Exactly. I will say that one argument that I do hear probably the most often of people who don't like the Enneagram is they say that it puts you into a box. I feel like, and I kind of already said this, like I feel like it's the opposite, because it kind of shows you the box that you're already in, and it gives you concrete ideas to really look out for and begin that growth.
For sure. So we already kind of like brushed the surface of just kind of why this might be important to kind of like know yourself, but like overall, why is that important that we know ourselves, but also to know how other people are?
Not only knowing yourself can, like, obviously that's going to help you with growth. But when you know other people and know kind of how they're seeing a situation, you can understand their perspective a lot better, and you can be more open to what they're bringing to the table. And I know I've said this before in other episodes, but I'm going to say it again fresh for this episode. But when you're in conflict, everyone thinks that they are right.
That's so true.
There's a reason why there's a conflict. Like, people are not going to fight for something that they are not passionate about.
For sure.
So if you're able to see that other perspective, and ideally if they're able to see your perspective, or if you're able to know yourself well enough that you can portray that perspective well, then you guys will be able to solve that conflict a lot better.
For sure. I feel like this is going back to what we've kind of said in past episodes, is just communication. And I think this is one way to kind of help you understand how to communicate with somebody.
Absolutely.
Or what might be the preferred way for them.
Yeah. And even like, I know my type really well, so I can also recognize like faulty patterns, or like where I'm getting stuck on one side of an argument or a disagreement, even when I'm like being stubborn and I'm like, I know this is because this is how I see things, and like other people don't see it that way. But it kind of gives me that like perspective even of myself.
So I feel like we've kind of touched on like the Enneagram being an element of growth. So does that mean like you change your Enneagram type, or like what happened? Like, what do you mean by growth with the Enneagram?
Oh, that's a really good question. So there's a theory that you don't change your Enneagram over the course of your life, but as you grow, you can access different characteristics of other types. And this provides you with like a different, like, as some of the articles put it, like a new and conscious way of like perceiving and moving throughout the world. So I know, really fancy.
I was gonna say, that sounds very philosophical.
Philosophical way to say growth. Just like a different way, more perspective. I think
that's a good word.
Just to sink it down, new perspective.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to see your perspective better and other people's perspectives better just opens you up for a lot more understanding.
So I know we talked about like the 9 points, so I'm assuming we're talking about 9 types. What are the actual Enneagram types?
Okay, so I'm going to go over a brief overview, and I mean like brief. I could talk for hours about this, and I do with my students, but
we do at home.
We do at home. Randy and I use this a lot. It has kept us like pretty conflict free too, which is great. Or even like when we do have like hard conversations, like we see where each other are coming from and see where that perspective lies. But again, this is like, we only have a certain amount of time, and you guys don't necessarily want to sit here for 5 hours or 9 hours. So just to do like a brief overview in relation to athletic trainers, the 9 types, I'm just going to go over just their headings real quick. So like they each have like quote unquote names, and everywhere that you look is going to give a different name for each type. But the numbers will always be the same. So I want you to listen along and try to see if there's anything that really you identify with. And remember, you can identify with multiple types, but there's one type that's most dominant. And that's where you're going to see most of your perspective come from.
Got it.
And then we'll tell you our types as well.
For sure.
So type 1 is a reformer, a moralizer, or a perfectionist. These types are high standards, rule makers, rule followers, and highly detail oriented. Each type has a core drive and a core fear, and this is really where that decision making is centered from. So a core drive of an Enneagram 1 is to be good, ethical, and right. The core fear, on the other hand, is to be wrong or to be a bad person. So the way I categorized all these is I put together, you know how I said originally, like this idea of like everyone can bring cookies to a party?
Yeah.
I've kind of adapted that with a little bit of help of how everyone helps an injured athlete, because obviously every athletic trainer is gonna help an injured athlete.
That's I like the bridge to like the actual like AT.
Right, but each athletic trainer, each type, Enneagram type, is going to have a different motivation.
Interesting.
So an Enneagram 1 is going to help an injured athlete because it's their duty to do the right thing, follow protocol, and ensure the athlete gets proper care. So you can tell they're motivated by integrity, responsibility, and doing things correctly / by the book.
Interesting. Okay.
These type 1s are the responsible ATs. They're going to make sure the EAP policies, procedures are flawless. Practice ethically, default to doing things by the book, and expect excellence of themselves and others. As you listen to, you can see some parallels between some numbers, and then there's like slight differences in why, like, some might be more goal oriented, but there might be like slight changes. Like,
got it.
Like the main motivation of a 1 is like justice, like ethic, like practice ethically or doing things correctly, perfectionist, stuff like that.
Okay.
So for example, like if I was going to go into the next episode, I would talk about how like when I work with Enneagram 1s, they see everything like pretty black and white. So if I'm working with them on something really challenging, I'm going to break it down to black and white. But if I want to challenge them a little bit more, then I'm going to challenge them to see that gray area.
For sure.
And I'll give more examples too.
So what does this type kind of look like in when they're stressed? Like kind of like in that kind of like that burnout that we're talking about.
So you can kind of get an idea. Like if you think of, I feel like 1 is the easiest to start with, and it's like number 1. Like I feel like whoever did that, good job. 1s are overly critical of themselves and others when they're stressed. And this is like not all the time. Like I'm just talking about like when they're at their worst. Not at their worst, but you know, like when they have a lot on them.
Yeah. Like when they're in that just overload.
In their overload. You'll see Enneagram 1s have a lot of like more harsh self-talk, like I should be doing more. It's like you're already doing a lot.
Yeah.
You don't need to be doing more, but that's how they're thinking. They may begin to micromanage or not trust others to do things the right way. Have you ever felt like that where it's like, I just have to do it my way because I don't trust other people to do things up to my standards. That's like classic Enneagram 1.
Yeah.
Hyper focus on perfect documentation, feeling guilty when relaxing because it's not productive, and then not being able to delegate tasks for fear that others will not do it up to their standards.
That's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that just like now spiraling and creating more stress on the Enneagram 1.
Yeah. So a growth example for an Enneagram 1 would be accepting that good enough is sometimes enough. So you don't need to reach that perfection for every single task you do. Like, that's not possible. Especially when time, context, or athlete comfort matters more than textbook form. That's when we want to focus on this, like, good enough. Going back to like an older episode, when we were talking about the on-field evaluation, we talked about how you have to be thorough enough on the field. Something that I really liked that someone submitted. You have to be thorough enough, which means that you're obviously doing your eval as best as you can to rule out the life-threatening things, etc. But you don't want to spend 30 minutes on the field. That's not the best for that situation.
For sure. So how do we get to that kind of that growth aspect? Like, what steps can be done?
So Enneagram 1s tend to be a little rigid, so we want to find more flexibility.
Okay.
Practicing self-compassion, like we were talking about, like perfection isn't the goal, but progress is the goal. Practicing things like done is better than perfect, or like we said before, good enough is sometimes enough. It helps you focus like on the bigger picture and protect your energy a little bit more than like just focusing on that perfection and hyper focusing, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Is this effective and safe even if it's not flawless is another question you can ask yourself.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Scheduling guilt-free rest, and this is like, I'm talking like put it on your calendar. I am resting from 2 to 3 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon, or something like that. Schedule it, because rest is productive. Like, if that's how you need to see it, instead of like resting and being like, man, I could be doing so much of this, like, your body is going to stop whether you like it or not, whether that ends up in sickness or whether that ends in what you are scheduling.
What you control.
Exactly. Delegate small tasks to others and avoid holding others to your own internal critics' high standards. And then seek feedback from trusted mentors to challenge your, quotes, right way thinking.
Ooh, interesting.
I also have an affirmation for each type. I chose to include it in this episode and not the next episode purposefully because I think it's just generally helpful for growth. But this is also something that I try to give to my students because I feel like it does really harness that idea of growth for each type. So for an Enneagram 1, we already kind of said it. I grow through progress, not perfection.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. So the next type is type 2, which is, I'm a little biased towards because Randy's a type 2.
That's me.
Yeah. So, I have a lot of type 2s in my life. They are the helper, giver, and mentors. Not only do I personally have a lot of type 2s in my life, but you guys probably also have a lot of type 2s in your life because we're in a serving profession. So 2s are abundant in athletic training. They are sincere, they are empathetic, they are nurturing, they are generous, and they have great rapport and trust. Their core drive is to be needed and appreciated, but their core fear is being unloved or not needed.
Yes. Yes, just yes, all the above.
Do you feel like?
Yeah, no, that's spot on.
Yeah, the 2 is like Randy, like everyone helps the injured athlete, but the reason why Enneagram 2s help is because they care deeply about other people. They want the athlete to feel supported, safe, not alone. And something that I want to highlight that wasn't really like in the core fear, core desire, but kind of like motivationally, if the type 2 were in that situation, they would want someone to care for them too.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes why they do the things that they do. So if you're around a type 2, it might be helpful to notice the things that they're doing and see if they're doing it because they're seeking that back for themselves.
Yeah.
Because they won't say it.
Yeah. For sure.
These type 2 athletic trainers are compassionate caregivers with great bedside manner. They have a strength in sensing the needs of others, like even without anyone saying like what they need. Even like emotionally, physically, it doesn't matter. Like Enneagram 2s can just notice that if like they can just sense it. The thing about Enneagram 2s though is they do struggle with boundaries. So they might say yes beyond their limits, such as taking things on to help others or staying late at work because it benefits the athletes.
Yeah, that's happened before.
One time, I'm gonna expose you, Randy, just real quick. Sorry,
that's
you
fine.
can expose me in the next one. But the one time Randy was working a cross country meet the weekend that we were moving, and there was a 6-pack of bottles, and for some reason like it got left behind or something like that, and Randy's like, oh, don't worry about it, I'll just take them home and like wash them at home. And I was like, no, sorry, like they can take them on the bus, like it's not that big of a burden on them, we're moving. Like let them handle it, let them handle the work stuff, we'll handle moving. If that gives you a great example of like he just wants to do everything for everyone else and like take the burden off of everyone else.
Yeah, we'll get to the growth part though.
Yes. In stress, 2s need affirmation, so they may become overly involved, overly people pleasing, and are manipulative to get that affirmation. A classic 2 ignores, neglects their own needs. So like in an athletic trainer, this is things like skipping meals, like lacking sleep or lacking boundaries because it benefits someone else. They may become passive aggressive and they may withdraw when they're unappreciated. So something to like a growth to combat this, say no to covering that extra game so you can rest. And then also just trust that others can step up too. Like it doesn't always have to be you.
Yeah. And I think that's something too that, I've learned over the years, especially since we learned about the Enneagram. So I feel like for sure that like once you kind of know that and kind of work on that like that, you can feel that growth.
Right. And I've seen so much in you too. Like that bottle example was like way early in Randy's career, whereas like now, like no chance is he gonna say,
"Nah, dog.
Like I'm gonna take those bottles home to wash them at home."
Nah, dog. So how do we get to that growth? What tools can be used?
So Enneagram 2s in stress, I guess, can start people pleasing, but we're working on getting more boundary setting and self-care. So identifying and naming your needs so that you can meet them before serving others. Checking in with yourself, saying like, what do I need to do today?
Oh, that's good.
Something that's really hard for an Enneagram 2, let others help you.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup. Practice saying no without guilt. This one I'm going to put a little star on because I feel like this is hard for like a lot of people. Something that I heard recently that I think would apply And you can take it with a grain of salt or take it like how you would want it, but you can build up to saying no. If you really want to say yes, give it a little like star, like yes, but only if my needs are met. Like whatever this blah blah blah, insert your needs here.
Yeah.
Or like, I want to say yes, but I need this to happen too. So then those people, that's also a form of communication. So then you can also see, you can be a little bit more transparent on why you can't just blindly say yes and not blindly make that happen.
For sure.
Also, build relationships with others who value you beyond what you do for them.
Yeah, that's important.
And who give back to you emotionally.
Snaps.
Yes.
That's important.
My affirmation for our 2s: I am loved and valuable for who I am, even when I am not helping.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Do you identify with that?
Yes. Literally everything in that section I identified with.
I feel like that's the thing, like with the Enneagram, is like, I don't want to go off too much of a tangent, but there are like ideas behind like these. You can go take like an Enneagram test, but they're not so accurate if you don't know yourself well. So I think it's better to just like hear all the types and go through them, but obviously like sometimes that's a lot to do if you're not like all that into it. So sometimes the tests have their place.
For sure.
All right,
so we've gotten through types 1, type 2. Now we're on to type 3.
So type 3 is near and dear to my heart because type 3 is what I am.
Yes.
It is the achiever, the performer, the producer.
What's funny is this type, like how I was saying for me, how it's just boom, boom, hits everything. This one's definitely
this one's definitely me. This one is a little bit, I want to say like two-headed. Because there's a success-driven 3, and then there's an image-driven 3, and they're not the same. So like, I'm not really gonna break it down, but you can kind of get an idea if someone's a little bit more like image-oriented versus like goal-oriented. So anyway, just the generic type 3, extremely goal-oriented, successful, extremely competitive, like the most competitive out of the entire, all of them. Image conscious, driven, adaptable, thrive under pressure to reach the highest of standards. Like if there is the top of the ladder, they're going to reach it. That is like their whole life's purpose.
Yeah.
The core drive is to be successful, admired, and efficient. Their core fear is of failure or of being worthless. Everyone helps the injured athlete, but the reason why Enneagram 3s help is because they want to handle it efficiently, look competent, and show that they can lead under pressure. So you can tell like they're motivated by success, performance, and providing value or proving value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about that I think is really interesting is I feel like type 3s are not, I don't say this like with evidence behind it, so don't quote me, but I personally feel like type 3s are not as common in athletic training because athletic training is kind of the bottom of the totem pole. Whereas you see more like type 3s as like physicians.
Yeah.
Or like lawyers or like in those very highly well-regarded jobs. It is like so hard for a 3 to be at the bottom rung.
Yeah.
Like type 3 is a true type 3 is probably not someone who could stay in like an assistant athletic trainer role for a long time. These type 3s are like, they're driven doers. They climb the ladder. They're often in head AT positions like early on in their career, or like whatever they picture as like the most successful position in their eyes. So like a lot of people think like D1 is the most successful or professional sports is the most successful, which we're not about that life. We don't see, like, it's great if you're there. We don't think that's the highest position, most successful position, but just regarding what, if you think that, That's what threes tend to lean towards.
Yeah.
If threes aren't getting enough at work, they're finding leadership positions outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
They're always looking for things. What is next?
Yeah.
Not spending a lot of time in the moment. Threes love efficiency, getting things done. So they will be the ones making the athletic training facility more efficient so they could get more done in the span of 24 hours.
Is that true?
Yes, it is. They thrive off of when they're the thing that I'm going to interrupt myself. The thing that like drives me nuts is like spending the time to redo something that I've already done previously, because then I feel like I'm just wasting time.
Yeah.
So systems galore. That's
Yeah.
how we run things efficiently. Threes thrive off when their treatment plans work. So like seeing athletes return to play because of success, like hallelujah. Their worth is tied to being the best. So they'll avoid showing vulnerability or showing like that failure.
Okay.
It's hard for them to live through that. So, I mean, I feel like I've kind of grown.
Yeah.
Like definitely couldn't have done that early on in my career, like make mistakes, like no.
Yeah.
But now obviously like that's part of my growth path. Threes are also like, when I think of threes, I think of like, now I know I'm a three, so like maybe this is like not a compliment. It's not a compliment at all. But when I think of threes, if you've ever seen like Suits, Harvey is a classic three. They're like very cunning. Or like think like Zootopia, the fox, like any like salesman or someone who can like talk their way out of things, like sometimes for not good.
Yeah.
There's a three for you. In stress, they can become overly image focused, impatient, overly competitive. They can cut corners to get things done, push themselves or others way too hard. I've done that before. Oops, sorry. Loses joy in the work because they put feelings aside to reach goals is a classic three, like set aside emotions to reach your goals. It gets you there faster. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
They might become numb or autopilot and like withdraw a little bit. And then what you really want to watch out for is like if you start to feel like a failure even when you're succeeding because your standards just keep growing.
That's got to be hard.
Yeah, and like you just don't see it. It's just like not equivalent.
So if that's what stress is, then what would be the growth in the three?
Admitting when you're overwhelmed to your coworkers rather than powering through it to avoid falling behind. Like letting other people in.
Okay.
And letting people see your human side. That is something that I am working on.
Yeah.
So like success driven, yes, that's what like threes are, but we're moving toward like authenticity and presence, like being
present.
A lot of identity is tied with productivity, but you are more than what you do as a three. So doing something pointless for fun that is not productive whatsoever is like something that threes can work on to help with this, like disconnecting their identity from that productivity.
I was saying, I feel like that's something that I used to do for you, is to remind you that just like if something didn't work out like to the standards that you wanted, that's not what defines you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is hard to hear, but you need to hear it.
Yeah.
I need to hear it. Going back to like taking off that professional mask, like showing your human side, people don't like perfect people. So like if you actually want to be liked, like the logical idea of being human hopefully helps you realize that people do want to see your human side.
Yeah.
Explore what success means to you, not just what it looks like externally. This is something I struggled with in my early career. I wanted certain jobs because other people thought that they were good jobs, not because I wanted it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Practice presence over productivity. So connecting with athletes as people, not check boxes. That sounds so like not human.
Yeah.
Celebrate effort and process, not just results or outcomes. So this is something we talk about this all the time. If you've heard our previous episodes, I'm sure you've heard this too. Julie Max, one of Randy's biggest mentors, like sat me down and like coined me in like 2 minutes and was like, I know exactly who you are. You're someone who just moves from one thing to the next to the next. You need to celebrate everything, like celebrate your successes. And so now we actually take the time to celebrate those stepping points.
Yeah.
No matter how small, no matter how big, we take the time to celebrate them instead of just moving on to the next thing. And it really does like make a difference.
It does make a difference. It's fun.
It is. It is fun. So my affirmation for my 3 is, not everything is mine to do, even if you're good at it. And I have worth and value beyond my achievements.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for type 4?
Yep, let's do it.
Type 4 is the individualist, the dreamer, the romantic, the creative. Remember how we said Enneagram 3 is like push aside emotions? Type 4s live in emotion.
They're diving in on that.
So they are highly individualistic, they are expressive, they are dramatic, they are emotionally temperamental and not afraid to feel their emotions. Their core drive is to be authentic and deeply understood. Their core fear is of having no personal identity or of being insignificant.
Interesting.
So while everyone helps the injured athlete, Enneagram 4s help because they understand what it's like to be in pain or feel misunderstood. They want that athlete to feel seen and heard. So they're motivated by empathy, emotional depth, and authenticity. Whereas 3s struggle with authenticity, 4s are the opposite, and they're very authentic and true to themselves. Yeah. Type 4s are empathetic, meaningful. Athletic trainer 4s have like out of the box thinking that allows for them to be like great problem solvers, and they'll probably have pretty unique like management plans that are not just like cookie cutter plans. So you can probably learn so much from them. They connect with athletes during emotional rehab journeys, especially those who are like overlooked or down. Enneagram 4 athletic trainers also feel overlooked and are comfortable expressing how underappreciated they are. So some people aren't as comfortable with this. So if you start to notice that, like, that is their comfort zone, they're not doing it for attention, like that's just how they feel. They're often ones to remind the team that mental health matters. You can spot them easily on the field because they need to express themselves. So like think like the patches on like AT kits. Yeah. Except that everyone has patches on their AT kits and you kind of see the same ones like over and over again. Enneagram 4s will have like very unique patches that you've probably never seen before. And probably a kit you've never seen before because they just want like individuality.
Will it be colorful?
I don't know. Depends on the person. They may just be discouraged if they feel like their work does not have importance or significance.
Interesting. So kind of going into that kind of feeling of like, if they have that feeling of insignificance, what does that like lead to stress wise?
We kind of touch on it like feeling unseen by athletes or colleagues. They can isolate themselves or withdraw. You can kind of see this in a couple of types, especially when they're feeling disconnected to work. So they can be like withdrawn, moody, dramatic, like extra dramatic in response to being misunderstood or undervalued. Mm-hmm. And they can allow their emotions to get in the way of staying on task.
Interesting.
So again, like to compare and contrast between the 3 and the 4, the 3 sets emotions aside in order to get things done, whereas in stress, whereas 4s allow their emotions to overtake them because that's where they're comfortable, and then they can get in the way of like staying on task.
So what does growth look like for the 4?
Finding value in day-to-day tasks like restocking or wound care, because we have to do that all the time, putting someone on stim, as part of the bigger picture of care, because obviously it's still important. So even though it's not that unique, like something that needs a lot of problem solving, like it still has value.
Got it.
So to go from emotional intensity to more like balance and grounding, reconnect with your why.
Ooh, that's important.
So what made you love athletic training for the first reason?
Yeah.
This like emotional grounding can help with that stress.
Okay.
Talking to a mentor who values emotional depth can help with like connection when they feel like withdrawing instead. Also normalize that you're not going to feel motivated all the time, but your work still matters. So don't wait until you're feeling inspired to show up. Like, you just be consistent.
Ooh, that's good. That's interesting.
You also want to seek out meaning in small moments, like a successful rehab, a student breakthrough, an honest check-in, kind of like what we were talking about. Those still provide value for the bigger picture. So our affirmation for an Enneagram 4 is, my presence is enough. I don't have to feel different to matter.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. That's really cool.
Okay, so the next one is a type 5. The type 5s are the investigator, observer, thinker. These ones, out of all of the types, I know the least amount of 5s. So I feel like 5s, it's kind of funny because 5s are so knowledge seeking. I actually feel like I know the least about 5s.
Okay, interesting. I wonder if this is like, at least athletic training wise, I wonder if this is like maybe more, could you say this could be maybe more those that kind of go into like education or
Absolutely,
academia?
absolutely. Okay. These are knowledge seeking, they are perceptive, they are secretive, they are isolated, they don't really, and I know that we said that they're not very, like, Enneagram doesn't have like outward personality types, but in an effort to best describe type 5s, they typically align a little bit more with introversion.
Ooh,
and they're not as social, but it's because they'd rather be spending their time like seeking knowledge and gathering knowledge rather than like social. Social doesn't really benefit them productively. So their core drive is to be competent and capable. Their core fear is of being useless, helpless, or incapable.
Okay.
So while everyone helps the injured athlete, the reason why Enneagram 5s help is because they know what's happening physiologically and they want to apply their knowledge to solve the problem calmly and precisely. Okay. So like you can see how that's like motivated by knowledge, competence, clarity. So type 5s are often knowledgeable observers. They're often introverted, very independent, and spend a lot of time deep in thought. Ooh. They're constantly absorbing protocols, researching the best rehab strategies, and always seeking ways to advance their practice. They love evidence-based practice as well, if you couldn't tell. They tend to stay composed in crises, but they may isolate or overthink before acting.
Oh, interesting.
Type 5s thrive in a split appointment setting that has both like patient care as well as like something that's like research teaching or like some sort of special project so that they can avoid that stagnation of like a routine practice.
So if they have that kind of that stagnation, what does that look like?
That would be like just like excessive patient staff interactions or like having to be in like a noisy, busy clinic that they can't get away from, like they can't find that escape. In stress, they're going to really avoid those like hands-on interactions or ones that are really emotionally heavy because those might be like a little bit hard for them. They might become over like hyper focused on like knowing enough when like obviously like there's always more to learn, but they don't necessarily see that, like everyone has their blind spot, and then they can also like over isolate. So like to get out of that, our growth example would be like stepping in to assist with an emergency, even if you're not 100% certain, because your calm presence is enough.
Okay.
So like it's not just about all that you know.
Got it.
Recognizing that.
For sure. So how do you get to that growth?
So like from detachment to engagement and embodiment, we want to encourage Enneagram 5s to use your voice in meetings, even if it's not fully formed or if you feel like you don't have all the answers, because Enneagram 5s know more than they think. Like this is their bread and butter. Like knowledge is their bread and butter. It doesn't feel like, it's kind of like when we were talking about the Enneagram 3, like in stress, that idea that the standards are higher and higher, and so even when they're succeeding they feel like they're failing. Same thing you can identify with a 5. Their knowledge is ever growing, so they feel like they don't know. Or even, you know, when you take a test and you're like, oh, I did really well on that, but then you didn't do well. But it's because you didn't understand the material, so you didn't understand what you missed. Whereas like some people like go through the test and they're like, oh my gosh, I did so horribly, but it's because they know every single thing that they missed. Like they're aware of every single thing that they missed because they know that information enough. Like if you know a little bit more, it's kind of like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Also creating boundaries around energy draining people / tasks. So like don't do too much of them. Our affirmation for Enneagram 5s is I am capable even when I don't have all the answers.
Nice.
Yeah. Ready to move on to type 6?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Hey, we're moving through these pretty good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So type 6 is the loyalist guardian team player. This is, I'm going to interrupt type 6 really fast because if you think about the different types, you see that 9 type that has like the lines. The 369 is a triad. So sometimes, and like every type is going to move to traits of one type in health and a traits of another type in stress. I didn't really go into that. But the 369 is a triad. So you'll start to notice now that we've gone over 3, we're going to go over 6, and then we're going to go over 9. You're going to see some like they're similarities, but they're not obvious. So kind of like start to pick those out. Type 6 is committed. They're responsible. They're anxious and cautious. Their core drive is to feel secure and supported. Their core fear is of being without support and guidance.
Got it.
So when we talk about working with an Enneagram 6 student, which there are a lot of them, and I'll go over this in the other episode, but basically like they're always going to want to ask more questions, and we want them to be okay not knowing everything before they make a decision.
Got it.
Everyone helps injured athlete, right? But Enneagram 6s help because they want to protect the athlete and make sure that everything is handled safely and according to plan. So they're motivated by duty, preparation, and trust.
Nice.
Enneagram 6s are the ones who will always have what ifs
taken care of.
And they are always going to look for holes in scenarios. Sometimes people don't see this intention as like a positive, but if you recognize that they are trying to make sure that bad things don't happen, then you can see it as a strength of theirs instead of like, why do you always poke holes in my plans?
Yeah.
6s are the rock of many AT teams. They are loyal, dependable, and a person who everyone wants on their team. They seek safety and security, so they're usually the ones who've like prepped for every worst case scenario. They've stocked backup AED pads, they've double checked practice coverage, but their tendency to worry can cause stress spirals and also indecision.
So then what would that look like as they start going further into that just spiral?
They're definitely going to second guess themselves, or like chronically worry about making mistakes. Out of all of the types, Enneagram 1 obviously doesn't like to make mistakes because it takes them away from being like that perfectionist self. Enneagram 3s don't like making mistakes because it takes them away from being the best, right? Enneagram 6s don't like making mistakes because it takes them away from like safety and security that they've prepped so hard to attain.
Yeah. Ooh, that's interesting.
So Enneagram 6s in stress like will spend a lot of time like catastrophizing or worrying, like worst case scenario. They might rely too heavily on an authority figure.
Okay.
Because they're going to feel paralyzed under pressure without that strong mentorship.
And that would make having an authority figure or a mentor would make them feel safe.
Exactly. Because they're looking for safety or security. They might have difficulty trusting others or making decisions.
Interesting. Okay.
A growth example for them is trusting that your preparation is solid. You can handle unexpected situations even without a backup plan.
Ooh, that's good.
And think about the times that you have handled situations without a backup plan. So how do we get there? Enneagram 6s need to go from fear and doubt to more like courage and inner trust. So ground yourself in what is true right now, not just like our what ifs or what might happen. Because what if it works out?
Yeah.
Or what if that doesn't happen? You can also chunk tasks down into steps to prevent paralysis. Sometimes when they see the big picture, it's overwhelming. So while some types need to focus more on the small details, some need to focus more on the bigger picture. Sometimes the bigger picture can be overwhelming for a 6, so we need to chunk that down into steps.
Yeah.
Trust your training.
I mean, that... Again, I feel like I could see the safety aspect of this.
6s, you guys are more capable than your anxious mind lets on. Another way to like build the stakes is you can take risks in a low stakes area.
Okay.
Like if you're trying a new treatment method on someone who maybe is a red shirt, and it doesn't matter if they make it to the game, like make it healthy for the game on like Saturday 100%. Or not. Right. Or maybe it's like you try something new for maybe not before the big game, but like another time.
Yeah.
Or speaking up in meetings.
Oh.
Though it's like could be low stakes depending on what kind of meeting, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Build a personal toolkit for moments of doubt. So like, you know you're going to feel these things. What works for you? Is it breathing exercises? Is it affirmations? Is it grounding routines? Is it something else? Figure out what works for you and do that. So
I was going to say, so speaking of the affirmation.
So our affirmation is, I can trust myself to navigate what comes next.
Ooh, man, I like the affirmations. They're so uplifting.
They are. And they're so individualized.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next one's super fun. It's a type 7. Type 7s are the enthusiasts, the dreamers, the visionary. These are like the FOMO of the Enneagram world.
The party animals of the Enneagrams?
They are spontaneous, they are versatile, they're easily distracted, they are scattered, they are optimistic. Their core drive is to have their needs fulfilled, to avoid pain, and to experience excitement. Lots of excitement.
Yes.
Their core fear is of being deprived and in pain. So also like avoids negativity pretty hard. Later you're going to see how 9s avoid conflict. It's different than an Enneagram 7 because we're avoiding like negativity and pain rather than like
just conflict.
Exactly. So there's slight differences. While everyone's going to help an injured athlete, the reason why Enneagram 7s help is because they're quick on their feet. They see it as fun challenge to make the athlete feel better and get back to the fun. Like just get it over with.
Fun.
So they can keep working.
Fun.
So they're motivated by optimism, possibility, staying upbeat.
Interesting. Nice.
7s bring high energy to the AT room. They pump up the athletes. They try new rehab tools. They keep the morale up. They love variety, navigating chaos, and are great at turning tough days into something more light.
Nice.
Even in tough seasons, they find the light and optimism to inspire others. Though, They might skip over paperwork, hard conversations, or finishing long-term plans.
So
That's like a stuck point for a 7.
So what does that eventually progress into?
They might become like scattered, overcommitted. They take on too much because they love to say yes. Why would they say no? That could cause pain or negativity. That's not fun. They again, those hard conversations they don't like to have. They constantly seek stimulation. So like more tasks, right? Or they are like jumping between a lot of projects because again, like stimulation, more fun. So they might take on too much of that. They overly avoid those hard conversations or that emotional depth. Whereas Enneagram 4 is really comfortable in like that deep emotion. 7s might not feel like they can handle that for very long. So like think about like a relationship between the two. They might have to compromise a little bit. Like I can stand a little bit of emotional depth, but we can't do as much as an Enneagram 4 wants. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then what does that personal growth look like for a 7?
Sticking with a rehab protocol even when it gets repetitive and using creativity to keep it engaging. Ooh. So even if they're doing the same thing over again, like maybe adding in something like using that creativity to make it fun. And it's going to make it fun for the athlete too.
For sure.
If you start to notice like that, like you're losing joy in the exciting things, like that's again another source of stress. Or a lot of times like if you're trying to stay busy to avoid feeling, that's like a stressful point of a 7 too.
Got you. So what steps can be taken to kind of get to that kind of growth?
So instead of avoidance, we want to get to depth and commitment. So learning to sit with the discomfort in tough conversations or a slow-paced clinical day, like sitting in the ATR is not all that fun sometimes, but learning to sit with that. Slow down. Instead of staying busy and trying to just keep yourself active so that you don't have to feel, let yourself experience those tough emotions without running to the next distraction. So like they don't build up.
Yeah.
You can find your vulnerability, talk to someone safe about what you're really feeling. Get curious about what you're avoiding because there might be something good in there.
Interesting. Okay.
And then finally finish what you start. So create small goals and built-in reward systems. This is like making things fun is how you can keep going.
Yeah.
No matter what you do. And they're very creative. So like finding something that makes it fun is something that's also up their alley.
For sure.
So our affirmation for 7s is joy can be found in stillness and structure.
Nice.
So 7s, I didn't say this, but 7s don't really like to be micromanaged for obvious reasons.
That's not fun.
Exactly. Another type that does not like to be micromanaged is type 8. This is the challenger, boss, protector. So this is like Enneagram 1 and 3 combined on steroids. So,
but this is also where a 2 would go into stress, right?
Yes. So, like I said before, like those different types, each type has a stress point and each type has a health point. It's like some people call them arrows, some people call them stress, some people call them disintegration or integration. So whatever you want to call it. So like a type 8 in stress gets a little bit more like manipulative or like like not specifically like all of a type 8, but like some of the stress points of it. Yeah. So 8s are amazing. They are strong. They are powerful. They are so self-confident. They are decisive. That is so hard. Think of like an Enneagram 6 that's like difficult with making decisions. 8s are the opposite. They are also confrontational. So core drive is to be strong and protect themselves and others. Core fear is of being harmed or controlled by others. So they're going to avoid, like, again, that micromanagement or someone telling them what to do. These will not survive in, like, I said before, like 3s definitely wouldn't survive in a assistant athletic trainer role, but holy moly, 8s absolutely will not survive if someone's above them and telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Everyone helps the injured athlete, but the reason why Enneagram 8s help is because they won't let anyone on their watch go down without a fight. They'll take control and make sure that they are taken care of. They're motivated by protection, strength, and control. 8s are powerful leaders. They are loyal and direct. They advocate fiercely for athlete welfare and safety. They're the ATs who will challenge a coach for pushing a concussed athlete, or they're going to speak up when policy is unfair. They tend to think rules are limiting to their independence and therefore will push the boundaries often. They command presence in emergencies. They lead confidently but may intimidate or over-control others without realizing it. So they really have to be careful about roles, boundaries, make sure they're not stepping out of their lane because they think they can do it better than someone else.
So what are some of those stress traits for an 8?
8s in stress are going to have more of that explosive, emotional, like anger or emotional shutdowns. They may bulldoze others, especially those who they see as weaker, seek conflict, or they're going to find power struggles, or they're going to take excessive risks. So as you see, like some of the other types are like avoiding that conflict. Like
8s leaning
8s are going to go head to head. They're going to distrust authority figures, and they may feel like angry, cynical, or disillusioned when their strength is misused or unrecognized.
Interesting. Okay. So then what does like growth look like for them?
Instead of like when they're working with students, asking a student how they felt during a high pressure eval instead of telling them like how they should have done it. So then they can get a little bit more of that perspective.
Okay.
That is how you start to go from like control to more vulnerability and collaboration. So seeing other people's perspectives, not like my way or the highway. Practice sharing power. This is a hard one. Ask for others' input even when you're confident in your own stance, because we know 8s are confident in their stances. We know that. Vulnerability is not weakness. So knowing that, embodying that, let trusted people around you know when you need help. Prioritize softness. Walks, music, rest, emotional release, something that they don't really feel comfortable with. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Explore the difference between strength and force. You can lead without dominating.
I think that's important.
I feel like this is something I also say to my athletes when they are being hard-headed and trying to practice or play in a game while they're injured. I always remind them that there's a difference. There's a fine line between tough and stupid.
Yeah.
And I would rather them be tough. I don't want them to be stupid.
Yeah.
So again, like noticing the difference, there's a way, like you are obviously a good leader. You don't need to brute force your way through leading.
Got it.
Let your team see that softer side, check in emotionally, express that gratitude, admit when you're tired, kind of like what we're going back to a 3. Let them see your human side to connect instead of just domineering.
Yeah.
Our affirmation is it's safe to let others help. I don't have to carry it all alone to be strong.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah. That one took a little bit of tweaking.
Got it.
I liked the carrying it. You don't have to carry it yourself to still be strong.
For sure.
8s identify with being strong.
For sure. So the last point in our Enneagram.
Last but not least, type 9. Type 9s are okay with being last because they are peacemakers, mediators, peacekeepers. They are agreeable. They are complacent. They are accommodating. They are flexible. They are trusting. They make a great caboose. Their core drive is to maintain inner and outer peace, and their core fear is of to avoid conflict, loss, or separation. So they don't like any of those things.
Yeah.
So they're going to do everything in their power to stay away from those things. While everyone helps an injured athlete, an Enneagram 9 will help because they want to keep that situation calm. They're also want to make sure that athlete's okay, and then make sure everyone stays grounded. So like crowd control, harmony. They're motivated by reassurance and steadiness. They're a nice calm presence. 9s keep the AT facility calm. They're good at de-escalating conflict because, again, they like to avoid it. They either just withdraw from it or they can de-escalate it. They get along with everyone. They are approachable. They are grounding. They are supportive. They help athletes feel safe and heard. They often avoid conflict or defer to others too much, even when they have great ideas themselves. Sometimes 2s and 9s get mistaken or mistyped because you can see how 2s do things for others. 9s don't do things for the betterment of others or so that it benefits themselves. They more do it so that the peace is
interesting. Okay.
Just stays.
Got it.
So like Enneagram 2s in stress are okay with conflict and will actually seek out conflict sometimes, whereas Enneagram 9s will not.
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting kind of distinction between that.
And like Enneagram 2s will go head to head with someone if it is affecting the needs of someone that they are trying to
for sure
to protect.
I agree.
Yeah, you're a great advocate for your athletes and you'll go head to head with whatever you need. Whereas 9s like kind of slither away from that conflict.
Got it. So then like you were saying, like, so we talked about kind of what the 2 kind of looks like in stress, where that kind of helps kind of differentiate between it. But what about a 9 in stress?
So 9s in stress are going to procrastinate, which obviously every type can procrastinate, but they're procrastinating because they avoid the difficult things. They're going to numb out, disconnect, feel invisible, apathetic. That's
hard. That's hard to see.
And this, again, like, remember the 3-6-9 is on a triad. You'll see like on that triad, like 3s numb, disconnect, feel apathetic towards things in stress. So like same thing with the 9s, they're going to numb out, disconnect, apathetic. They're going to lose a sense of purpose or direction. 9s actually do really well with 3s because 3s provide that drive when 9s kind of need.
I would say kind of lose that.
Right. In stress, 9s also put others' needs and wants and preferences first rather than their own. So then they might actually go along with some poor decisions to avoid rocking the boat.
Interesting. Okay.
So a growth example would be for a 9, speaking up during staff meetings with like a new system or something that you're passionate about, even if it might cause tension. At first, start small.
Yeah, start small.
Choose one thing to like assert today because your voice matters too. You can't just allow, like, there's a reason why you are in that room. So to go from avoidance to more action, assertiveness, identify what you're passionate about in the field and let that drive you forward.
Nice.
Energize yourself through movement or music. Enneagram 9 is definitely a body type, so feeling things and allowing things to move through their body might help energize them. Set clear goals and boundaries. Same thing with a 2, but 2s overextend themselves. So that's where they need to create that boundary. 9s, it's not really the same as because they're overextending themselves.
Yeah.
It's more because they're not trying to, they're just going to appease others just to keep the peace.
Yeah.
So if you're able to create that boundary, people don't like boundaries sometimes, but in order to protect yourself and your time and your voice, those boundaries are necessary.
Yep, for sure.
Don't be afraid to make waves. Conflict handled well can lead to a deeper connection and growth.
Yeah.
This is so hard, and I'm not an Enneagram 9, so I can't imagine how immensely exponentially harder it must be. But the people who I have hard conversations with are the people who I have the best connections with.
Yeah.
And the people who I can continue to have the hard conversations, but those hard conversations kind of disappear and get a lot easier because we did a lot in the beginning and a lot over time. So then it's not so big and heavy when they do pop up.
For sure.
Our affirmation for an Enneagram 9 is my voice matters. Peace includes me too.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
So those are the 9 types.
I think that was a great overview.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For just in general, so I didn't actually put an action item, but let's see. An action item is figure out your type. Go back and listen to a couple of the ones that you kind of identified with a little bit more. Find your type and identify one thing that you notice in stress and one thing that you notice in growth. There's my action item.
I like it.
See if you can apply it to yourself. And then in one of our next episodes, we can apply that to relationships and working with students, working with preceptors.
That'll be a cool one.
I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah.
So if you, again, are interested in the CEUs from this episode or the references are on our website. We do have a Category A CEU for this episode. Thank you so much to Clinically Pressed and Athletic Training Chat. Again, down in the show notes below, you just have to take the quiz, the course evaluation, and the certificate will be automatically generated for you.
Yep. And
it is a reporting year. So if you're interested in other CEUs, we also work with MedBridge. You can use code ATCorner for $101 off. It's on-demand CEUs, and it's a subscription for a year, so you can use it for this reporting period and next reporting period, which is a lot of bang for your buck.
For sure.
For other episodes, if you're interested, I know we kind of plugged some along the way. We don't do just CEU education episodes. We also do story episodes where we bring stories from athletic trainers all over the world and we synthesize them on various topics. We also have highlight interviews. Yep. Usually these CEU episodes are actually Randy reads a ton of research articles and he synthesizes them and we talk about them like in a conversational format. So make sure you check those out. And if you want to hear anything in the future, please reach out to us. And I think that's all my fine print.
Thank you for helping us showcase athletic training behind the tape. Bye.